The views and opinions expressed in the media or comments on this channel are those of the speakers or authors and do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions held by this channel's broadcaster. Due to the social nature of this broadcasting channel, videos may contain content copyrighted by another entity or person. This channel's owner claims no copyright to said content. The broadcaster of this channel cannot be held accountable for the copyrighted content. The broadcaster of this channel is a messenger and sharer of information and strives to verify, but cannot warrant the accuracy of copyrights or completeness of the information on this channel. If you have a complaint about something or find your content is being used incorrectly, please contact the broadcaster prior to making a copyright claim. Any infringement was not done on purpose and will be rectified to all parties' satisfaction. When World War I ended in 1918, the British took control of Palestine. The League of Nations issued a British Mandate for Palestine, a document that gave Britain administrative control over the region and included provisions for establishing a Jewish national homeland in Palestine, which went into effect in 1923. So, Amy, Deborah, Juliana, this is the beginning of how you all invaded a native land and took over that native land. And this is what we're dealing with today with Hamas. Just keep that in mind as we continue with the data that I will be presenting. According to the JewishVirtualLibrary.org, Israel had received over $120 billion in assistance, including 3 special aid packages during that time of Kissinger and Lyndon B. Johnson. The first followed the signing of the Israel-Egypt peace treaty and Israel's withdrawal from the Sinai, the redeployment of Israeli forces, and rebuilding of an air base in the Negev cost approximately $5 billion. The United States has given Israel more aid than any other nation since World War II, granting it more than $260 billion in funding assistance. And yet, the United States claims that they don't have the funding for reparations. The United States claims that they don't have the funding to enforce a national law enforcement reform. The United States claims that they don't have enough to assist impoverished cities and states like a Flint, Michigan, or a Jackson, Mississippi, who are still dealing with contaminated water, something that is a bare necessity. And yet they are sending 200 and have sent over $260 billion to a created state. And we wonder why Hamas is angry. Shouldn't the people in America feel some kind of slight, considering we spent more money over there than in our own backyard? Okay, I'm just, again, something to think about as we're pursuing, because I want us to think about all the Caucasian presidents that gave money to a Zionist group of people that were implanted into a native land between 1946 1947, and therefore creating the state that we know as Israel in 1948 under Harry S. Truman. Well, Dwight Eisenhower, John Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, our wonderful Barack Obama, along with Donald Trump, all contributed to $260 billion being given to a created state And the purpose was to wipe out the natives that were there. Let's find out why. We'll get into that as we continue with this particular vlog. We will continue to kind of expand as to why Hamas possibly could be upset. $260 billion. Just remember that, if you will. From 1948 to 1982, pale-faced Zionists who were implanted through U.S. backing slaughtered, maimed, and injured over 788 natives of the Middle East, including the Palestinians, including the Jordanians, the Egyptians, and the Lebanese. If you're unfamiliar, which you should be, but maybe not, I'm sure you've heard Nakba, the catastrophe. This is where people that look like you, Zionists that look like you, strategically, systemically, ethnically cleansed over half of the natives in that area. The bulk of that was in Palestine itself. When you look at this particular slide, I want you to focus on the green, Amy, Deborah, and Juliana. The green represents the Palestinians, the natives that were there before your people came in and uprooted them and took over their land. It's not just your fault, because again, with US backing and other European countries that had their own selfish motives, they funded this ethnic cleansing, this genocide, if you will. Prior to any interference, the green represented the Palestinians. Look at what your people have done to those innocent lives, those civilians that were there way before you all were. That's the present. Look at the white. All of that white is y'all. If you were kin to the green, Amy, Deborah, and Juliana, and you saw how your people continue to be treated, how would you and how long would you endure that type of trauma? Why would Hamas be angry about that, right? You're talking decades of a government that is backed by outside interference, including America. How would you feel? How long would you put up with that abuse? Because apparently our government didn't care, because under Johnson and Kissinger, under that regime from 1967 to 1973, again, we gave your people the ammunition to take over areas in Jordan, Syria, and Egypt, and Palestine that belonged to those natives, and gave them to y'all, to your people. 788,000 natives out of 1.9 million. And this was before 2023, of course. You had wars right when they came in, and who wouldn't? If you take an opportunity to look at this slide, you will see that there's a commonality of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. Do those countries ring a bell? Right. Those were part of the 788,000 lives that your people took. And they've been trying to pick up the scraps ever since. So while you're thinking about that, we're going to head on into another Middle Eastern war that was backed by America. Because we're good for backing up other people's stuff. And we're going to find out why we're always being involved in other people's controversies and conflicts, and we're not taking care of our own. But that's the American way, is it not? We're always so quick to point fingers at everyone else and tell them about their democracy, and yet the very same people that built this country that look like me, not you, still don't have reparations. You don't even want to do a study, but I don't hear you all backing that up. But you're wanting black and brown to back you all up in in your 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 battle to literally wipe out what's left of a group of people that you all wiped out to begin with. Under the regime of Reagan Bush in the 1980s, the siege of Beirut took place from June 1982 to September 1982. 14,000 Lebanese people were murdered. 20,000 Lebanese civilians were injured. In less than 90 days, 6,776 Lebanese civilians were unalived from the hands of your government, from your government. With the assistance from the United States, millions of dollars of property damage was accrued in Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and other Middle Eastern territories. Unfortunately, the U.S. did nothing to assist those natives displaced from their native lands, nor reconstruct the buildings or the homes or the businesses that they destroyed. That is typical of the United States of America. We go over there, we wreak havoc on different countries, we demolish them, and we just leave you after we get what we want. But that's the American way. That's the American way. Yeah, it's the American way to come and leave this type of havoc on the civilians for the sake of democracy. Because again, that's what America does. We always come and invade other people's countries. We call them third world countries, and have the assumption that they don't know any better. So we're here to teach their poor selves because they don't know that where they're living and how they're living, it's beneath them. How arrogant of the United States. And that's going to be our biggest flaw when the chickens truly do come home to roost. And they are. They're brewing, and they're still plotting um, to take us down. And yet we're so arrogant and so vain that we believe it's our way or the highway. And that will, again, that will be our albatross. You will see soon, because we can no longer continue to leave this type of destruction in the path for our quote unquote democracy. And over here in these states, there is no democracy for certain people. There is a tale of two countries, countries, that we also need to pay attention to. So again, Amy, Juliana, Deborah, and those other ones of you all that are criticizing um, those that are actually advocating for innocent lives to be spared. And you're labeling them anti this or anti that. And it's not that at all, because if you knew your history, not what you've been taught, but if you truly knew your history, you would know that your hands are not clean. And if I were you, I would take the time to research. And once you research on your own, you will find that you have been lied to and hoodwinked and bamboozled as well. So again, something to think about. So yeah, when you were a kid or a teenager, were you thinking about literally your life, imminent danger, that you wake up the next morning and it may not be there? No, you were probably going to the movies or hanging out with your friends at the mall. Well, your country wiped out that everyday teenage life. For what? So that you can say that we've taken over our land that didn't belong to you? When you look at these pictures here, I'm hoping you're seeing that that could have been you. That could have been your people. But instead, your people displaced them. And for what? For what? Look at the bombings. Does that look familiar to you? Because that's what you all are doing now. Within, again, 90 days, they took over. They wiped out. They eradicated a people. And you're wondering why they're upset now? Because according to you, they would have no reason to be upset. I'll tell you what for. It's really sad because it's senseless slaughtering of innocent lives. And it's to expel the remaining PLO movement, to remove the Syrian influence in Lebanon that was left, the little that was left, and to install a pro-Israeli Christian government. Now I ask you, what happened to the division of separation of church and state? Does that just apply on American soil? Because you all, that's what your purpose was. It was to dismantle any type of rights for other people in that region to worship who they chose to. They only had to worship who you wanted them to. What does that sound like? Isn't that what America, one of the main reasons why we left? Because it's treason when you think about it, but we use that as an excuse to get away, get from under the iron fist of Britain. Taxation without representation, along with the ability to have a religious freedom. Again, just something for you all to think about, because there's a lot of hypocrisy, like you've forgotten. I'm not sure, cognitive dissonance, but these things are here to kind of help us have this kind of dialogue, Amy, Deborah, and Juliana. And speaking of hypocrisy, let's get to the Reaganomics. Let's get to Ronald Reagan and George Bush, because we got to talk about the Siege of Beirut that took place in 1982, where we were coming again, once again, America was going into territory that had absolutely nothing to do with us, backing up Israel. Why? As Israel wiped out the neighboring territories, as they had done since they had gotten created in 1948, you all have continued to, instead of being collaborative, you all had the mindset that is our way or no way, and you weren't even supposed to be there. But when you have backing like Ronald Reagan and the other presidents, they're saying there are no words to properly express our outrage. And I think the outrage of all Americans at the despicable act, they were referring to how some of the, what they call leftist groups, were fighting back against Israel, or what we now know as Israel, the Zionists. During that time, though, let's also remember that the American government conveniently presented false narratives of what was going on in the Middle East, making Israel out to be the victims of civil torture and abuse. While they were doing that, another foreign scandal was going on between the U.S., Nicaragua, and Iran. Yes, that Iran. See, Oliver North was a lieutenant colonel in the military during those times and remained silent when he had the opportunity to implicate the higher ups, the Ronald Reagans, the George H. Bushes, and so forth and so on, with the Iran-Contra scandal. And it was basically where we were offering money and arms to interfere with foreign matters that had nothing to do with us. But then again, because we were trying to protect oil, we wanted to make sure that no one else got into that area, that we had control of the area, that we put someone in that would be a puppet for our purpose, for our goals, for the Western goals. Well, Oliver North decided that he was going to not be a snitch, and he ended up receiving $150,000 in fines, 3 years of suspended probation, and 1,200 hours in community service. Of course, the sentence was later reversed, and he subsequently ran for a political office. He didn't win, but he became the president of the NRA, the National Rifle Association. Only in America, right? Only in America could that happen. So what is wrong with Hamas? Well, Amy, Juliana, Deborah, and others emotionally charged like yourselves who are lashing out at everything and everyone who you subjectively deem against your people. In lieu of some of the new information you have received from just this segment alone, maybe you will tune in to the next segment that will provide more data on some factors leading to the civil unrest you are presently witnessing in your quote unquote native land. Have more empathy and compassion for the innocent lives taken or injured or even displaced because they inherited this systemic turmoil where people who look like you were implanted and took over their land. Y'all did that. Recognize that your brethren do not have clean hands. The Israeli government has been responsible for civil genocide and ethnic cleansing of neighboring countries since you got there in 1948, and it's continuing today. For example, did you know that in 2013, Israel's Health Ministry's Director General finally admitted to have been deceptively sterilizing Ethiopian Jewish women as they waited for entry in a relocation camp or doing their entry into Jerusalem for decades? Did you know that in 2019, the Israeli government finally acknowledged their responsibility after the United Nations investigated and made their findings public? Did you know that between 2019 and 2023, this is 2023, by the way, the Israeli government continues to resist the entrance of Ethiopian Jews, the original natives, into Jerusalem, their homeland, along with bombing innocent lives? Did you know any of that? I'm sure you didn't, because they're not going to tell you that. Well, because they're not going to tell you that, I included some of the articles in here. This article here was taken in 2013, where Israel admits the Ethiopian women were given birth control shots without their permission. Your people. No warm welcome for Ethiopian Jews. And let's be real, ladies. When we say Ethiopian Jews, we're meaning black Jews. Jews who look like me, not you. Your own people are denying them entrance. Why is that? Why is you not Netanyahu doing that? Did you know that? Let's go there. Did you know that? This was taken in 2019. After years of denying it, Israel finally admits to sterilizing black Ethiopian Jewish immigrants without their knowledge. And these are the people that you're advocating for. They're demanding entrance. Why should a Jew, respectfully, why should your own kind demand entrance into a place that's supposed to be all of y'all's if it's everything is lined up the way it's supposed to? I'm giving you a few things to think about, and I'm hoping that you will be able to take some of the things into consideration and again empathize and think there by the grace of God could have been me or my family, as opposed to automatically becoming emotionally charged to assume that what you're being told is correct. I enjoy any type of dialogue that's respectful. I encourage you to leave comments, subscribe, share if you haven't. Please check back again because there's going to be a third part because we're only in 1980. We haven't even really gotten to what has been going on recently. We will expand on that and I will bring in more articles of who and what and how we got to this place. So I'm hoping that this can generate some type of dialogue and conversation that we can really come up with, we can resolve conflicts more amicably With your people, it seems like you don't want that. It seems like your Netanyahu is saying, I'm going to wipe everybody out. And why would you want to have that type of a dictator, if you will? Why would you want to back someone with that type of mindset? And maybe, you all know something that I don't. Please share, because we're all here to learn. We just know that we're tired of being blamed when we don't pick up y'all's flag, literally, when you have not picked up our battle. And we've been battling here and abroad since people that look like you kidnapped us and brought us over here. And then some of us were already here and you wiped us out. But you're not saying anything about that. You didn't pick up the cross on that. So don't be surprised when we're not picking up the cross for you, because you have more collective backing financially, economically, politically, socially, than we could ever imagine. And to be quite honest, there have been some challenges between both of our sides. So you can't just pick and choose when we're important to you. You can't just use us as pawns, because either way this happens, we will still be mistreated, abused, and misused. So again, I thank you for your time. I know this has been a lengthy one, but it's history. And we're having to kind of re-edit what we've been taught and learn the truth. So thank you again for your time. Until next time, Ashe. Fair use disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. The copyright laws of the United States recognizes a fair use of copyrighted content. Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Act states, notwithstanding the provisions of Section 106 and 106A, the fair use of a copyrighted work, including such use by reproduction in copies of phonorecords or by any other means specified by that section for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research, is not an infringement of copyright.